Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Malcolm Maestrel and I'm a Membership Services Coordinator with IAAP. Thank you for joining us for the final webinar of the 2023 Accessibility Testing Considerations mini-series. We're excited to conclude the mini-series with today's webinar, using Chrome's accessibility tree for manual testing of HTML and ARIA. But before we begin, we have a few general housekeeping items to go over. Closed captioning is provided. To enable closed captioning, select the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and the stream text links for English, French, German, Spanish, and Swedish will be posted in the chat as well. American Sign Language interpretation is also provided, and microphones are muted to prevent any background noise or disruptions. And we ask that all attendees please post your questions in the Q&A, and the chat will be monitored for general dialogue and technical issues. Today's webinar will be recorded and available in our webinar archives, and we will send out a copy of the recording and presentation to everyone who registered. And now I would like to turn today's program over to our presenter, Russ Weakley.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming on. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Welcome. I'm going to be talking, Malcolm?
Looks good.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to be talking about Chrome and how we can do manual testing. But before we dive into Chrome's accessibility tree, we're going to look at three concepts that can be used associated with HTML elements. So the three concepts are accessible names, roles, and accessible descriptions. So let's start with accessible names. These are short text descriptions that are used to provide labels for all HTML elements. And their aim is to provide information about the purpose of that element. And the other thing they're supposed to do is distinguish from other elements on the page. And for that reason, our job is to make sure that all HTML elements and their accessible names are totally unique within each page. You've probably all seen where people have put more links and there's just a series of links all saying the word more. That's an example of non-unique accessible names. Next up, what about roles? So almost all HTML elements have a role associated with them. And these are used to define the purpose of those elements. For example, we have something like input type equals radio, and that has a role of radio. And we have other ones like the A element, which has a role of link. Now we'll see soon that some elements don't have a role at all, and they're not defined in this mysterious thing we'll call the accessibility tree coming up soon. And a final one to talk about before we jump in is accessible descriptions. So sometimes HTML elements need additional context. This is on top of the accessible name. And in those cases, it could be things like instructions or error messages. Things associated with form controls are very common. And if we do our job correctly, they will become an accessible description, additional information for any element. Okay, so they're the three concepts. And now let's store them and think about how they're announced by assistive technologies. So we're going to start with a simple form control and a label. So on screen, we have a simple little diagram. We have the label, which says address. We have the additional information, which says include full street address. And we have a form control. And on screen now, we have the code associated with that, the HTML markup. And highlighted is the word address. That is the accessible name for this input here. The next thing we've highlighted is the type equals text, and that's the role for that input. And then we have the accessible description for the input, and that is highlighted and it says include full street address. And this two are associated with something we're going to talk about in detail soon called ARIA described by. So this bit of text is describing our input. And something we haven't talked about yet, we also have a state associated with the input. In this case, we're saying it's required. So how do screen readers announce all this information? Well, if we look at NVDA and JAWS, they will announce it in the following order. So we have accessible name of address, then they'll announce the role. In both cases, it will be edit, and then the state, which is required, and then the description, which is include full street address. So those two screen readers will announce it in this order. Now I'm simplifying here. VoiceOver, which is on Mac, does it in a slightly different order. Accessible name, state, role, and then description. But basically they all announce roughly the same information, even if it's in slightly different orders. But the question is, where do they get that information from? How do they store it and how is it announced, etc.? Well, it all starts with the accessibility tree. So what is the accessibility tree? Well, I'm going to talk technically here for a second, but I'll show you a demonstration very soon. The accessibility tree is just a simplified version of what's called the document object model. That's also referred to as the DOM. Sounds like an Italian mafia movie. The accessibility tree consists of information about specific HTML elements. Not all elements, but most of them. And it includes things like some of the stuff we've just talked about, name, role, description. But it can also be things like states, invalid, required, checked, expanded. All these are different states. And even the value, and this could be something that the user's added or chosen from form controls. This information is passed to assistive technologies so that they can understand the overall page, they can understand how to navigate the page, and how they can interact with content on the page. So here's a diagram on screen, I'll talk through it. Basically, we have a blue box, which is the browser. And inside the browser, we have the document object model and the CSS object model. Those two things create the accessibility tree. And then still in the browser, we have the accessibility API. And then outside the browser, we have the assistive technology, which would be a screen reader. And in this diagram, there's a conduit between the accessibility tree and the assistive technology. And that conduit is the accessibility API. It passes information backwards and forwards between the accessibility tree and the assistive technology. Okay, here's where it gets complicated though, because each browser has its own version of the accessibility tree, and they use their own accessibility APIs. And that means that if a screen reader comes to a page in a different browser, they're going to get a slightly different experience. That's because each browser and each operating system will play a part as well. Okay, so then why use Chrome's accessibility tree? Am I being paid for this service? The answer is no. The reason why I love Chrome is because it has this great panel called the Computed Properties panel. Now, by the end of this session, you're going to be sick of hearing me talk about the Computed Properties panel, but it is amazing. And this panel gives us a range of information in one small panel. So you can look at everything very quickly. And this is great for things like bug hunting and finding errors quickly and easily. So how do we access the Chrome's accessibility tree? Well, I thought what we're going to do here is a series of activities so you can actually play along as well. So if you thought you were just going to sit on your couch and drink beer, the answer is no, you're going to have to take part as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a page, and I'm going to add that into chat. Just grab that, put it into chat for those who want to take part. I just noticed someone saying that it's impossible to take notes. I'll try and slow it down, but also all of these slides will be available after the session. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so hopefully you've all got access to this page. And what we're going to do is do a range of activities on this page. So please, if you want to, play along. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find where the accessibility tree is. The first thing we've got to do is right-click anywhere on the page, and then we're going to go look for Inspect, and then that will help us open this thing called Chrome's Developer Tools. So anywhere on the page, you can right-click and go Inspect. And we'll talk about what that does in a second. Now, if you don't have access to a mouse, I'm going to show you some keyboard commands in a second as well. But hopefully something will appear within your Chrome browser, and it may be to the side or it may be below. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you both options. But hopefully everyone's got the developer tools open now. Now, if you don't have access to a mouse, it can also be done with keystrokes. For Windows, you can use Control-Shift-C, and on Mac you can use Command-Option-I. So if I go back here, I'm on a Mac, so I can go Command-Option-I, and that'll automatically bring up the developer tools. So I'm hoping everyone's got that going so far. You can give me a thumbs up if that's all working for you. And if you got stuck already, shout out in chat and we'll try and help. Oh, look at that. Excellent. Okay, so now what we need to do, oh, Bruce is on a mobile device. That will be harder. Okay, what we need to do now is look for the Elements tab and the Styles tab. So if we go back to our example, you should see a tab somewhere on screen called Elements and another tab called Styles. Now, they may be in different positions. So I'm going to show you what it looks like at the bottom. So Elements and Styles. Now, you may even have it in a third position. I'm going to just drag this out wider. You may even have it the Elements and Styles looking like this. But fundamentally, we need to find that Styles tab. That's the critical thing now. And then the next thing, the Accessibility tab is to the right of Styles. And it may not be visible. You may need to click the More icon. So I'm going to drag this back in. So let's pretend you're all looking at the same thing. We have our Elements tab, our Styles tab, and we want to look to the right and try and find the Accessibility tab. Now, it may not be visible until you click the drop down, and then you'll find Accessibility, and that's where we want to be. Now, I'll show it again in case it's at the bottom of your screen. So we have the Elements tab, the Styles tab. We want to move to the right and then let go, and we'll have Accessibility. So again, I just want to pause and just make sure everyone's got it. Maybe in chat, just go yes if you've found the Accessibility tab. We don't want to leave anyone behind. Oh, look at this. Excellent. And if you don't have it, yell out. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, I'm going to do something weird here. I'm going to, because I'm teaching, it's a bit easier. I'm going to pull my developer tools out into a floating window, but you don't have to do that. It's just to make it easier for me. And if you want to do that up here, right next to the cog, there are all different ways you can dock it. Most of you would have it to the side, some below. Some people would have it to the left. I've never experienced that in my life, but I'm actually going to pull it out and free float it just so I can show you more clearly. But you don't have to do that as long as you can see what's going on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on inside. We're going to talk about the Accessibility Tree panel, the ARIA Attributes panel, the Computed Properties panel. Remember, I'm going to told you you're going to be sick of this soon, and the Source Order panel. So if we go back here, we'll see that inside the Accessibility panel, we have the tab, we have these Accessibility Tree, ARIA Attributes, computed properties, and source order viewer. Let's go through them one at a time. The accessibility tree is actually the tree that we're talking about, and it will show you information about each element. On the left, we actually have the document object model, and at the right, we have the accessibility tree, which is a simplified version of the document object model. We're actually not going to look at this panel much at all, so I'm going to close it down. The next one is the ARIA attributes. And in some cases, we may have ARIA attributes associated with that element. And again, we'll talk about this briefly, but we're not going to spend time in there. We're going to spend almost all of our time inside the computed properties panel. This is where all the magic happens. So again, maybe in chat, can you see the computed properties panel? Just say yes if you can. And again, we're going to make sure everyone's got it. Cool. And apologies if I'm going very slow. I want to make sure, one, that I don't exhaust our wonderful sign language people, but also want to make sure everyone can get it. Okay. Well, now you're experts about the accessibility tree. The one thing I forgot, sorry, is down the bottom is the source order viewer. That will actually show you the source order of the page. But again, we're not going to spend time on that. We're just going to spend time in the computed properties panel. Okay. So we're going to dive now into our page. Oh, someone's asking in French. I have no idea, but someone in French can probably translate that for you. Okay. What we're going to do now is on a page, look for a link called Find Out More. So if we go here and inspect element on that link, so we're going to right click on it and choose inspect, we should have some information come up inside the computed properties panel. Okay, what we should see is a name of Find Out More and a role of link. So again, just in chat, are you seeing the role, the name of Find Out More and a role of link? Cool. No, that's not great. So Scott, if I don't want to call you out, but if anyone's not seeing it, you might need to make sure you're on the right element. So you've got to make sure you're on the Find Out More, and that will deliver that information. Cool. So what is this saying? This is saying, you know, screen reader, it would actually announce Find Out More link. Isn't this amazing? We're actually seeing behind the scenes at what's translated for assistive technologies. Okay, that was too easy. Let's go a bit harder. So there we have our answer. But before we do, all important elements must have names and roles. That's our job. And the reason is so that assistive technologies can understand them. One of the worst things that you can see is an object like a link or a button that doesn't have an accessible name. Why is that bad? Well, it means that assistive technologies would just hear link or button, so they won't know everything about that object. So our job is to make sure we can have an accessible name for any object. Someone has still lost it, can't find it anymore, can't find out more. Okay, so on the page here, you should be able to see what are mammals, a chunk of text, and a link saying find out more. I'm just going to zoom in so people can see it a bit clearer. So there's the Find Out More link. Right click, inspect element on it, and then make sure you're on that link, and then go to the accessibility panel, and you should have it. I hope that helps if you're still finding it. Hope everyone's okay. Okay, so now we're going to look at another one. We're going to is it considered sufficient description, or is it considered in context? Great question, Elizabeth. So down here, we have something evil going on. There are two Find Out More links. So you'd have to argue that in this case, this is not ideal because there would be two objects with possibly the same accessible name. Now, if you want to do your own little homework, a bit later we'll find out that they're not quite the same. I've lied to you. But that's a great question. We want to make sure that each one has their own accessible name and there's enough context around it. So we want to make sure that people understood what that means. In this case, it's a little bit problematic. You'd assume that's associated with the mammals heading, but we do have another version of it down there as well. So I'm not a fan of find out more links, but we've done it deliberately here. Okay, let's do our second piece. We're going to go to the image and find the name and role of the image. So if we go to our image, right click on it, make sure we're on the accessibility panel, make sure we're on the image, and you should have a name of a common wombat standing on a forest floor and a role of image. Okay, yes or no? Everyone got it? Cool. Excellent. Oh, look at this. You're all experts. Okay, now we're going to start giving away huge cash prizes. That's a lie. Same things as automating. Yes, Roger. These are the sort of things that things like Axe would find. We're just looking behind the scenes, though, at how it all gets wired up. Things like Axe interpret it for you. Okay, now we're going to go to the full name input and again find the name and role. So if we go up and find full name, this input up under the mammal news sign up. So we want to click on the input, right click and go inspect element. Now we need to make sure we're on the input and go to the accessibility panel. I'm going to close all those off and we should have name equals full name, role equals text box. Again, thumbs up or yes. Cool. I like the way people are getting fancy with their responses. Excellent. Now I'm going to show you something truly, I'm going to show you something truly evil here. What if the developer on this page hadn't programmatically associated with them? So I'm going to change something here. Forgive me. And suddenly, if I look at this input, there's no accessible name. That is one thing that we need to look for. And this is why the accessibility tree and this computed properties panel is fantastic. You can click on an input and tell if it's got an accessible name. Now I've disconnected the two for a second and now it has no accessible name. And so what would be announced is text box. You can imagine how frustrating that would be for a person who's blind, because what am I typing? What is it? I have no idea. So we need to make sure there's beautiful, accessible names associated with each of them. And suddenly we're back, and this would be announced as full name, text box, or type in text. Cool. Okay, so let's go on to our next one. What about the heading saying, what are mammals? What are people saying here? Does wrapping the input? Oh, Amy, great question. Okay, we're going to go off topic, but very quickly, some people would have seen, let us jump off to some code, that you can actually write a label and then put an input below. So I've just, on screen, I've just written a label code and an input code, and we can programmatically associate them by saying the label is for and putting a value and saying it's an ID and making sure they match. So if I just put a bit of text there, as long as they match, these are now programmatically associated. And if I look in the accessibility tree here, if I've done my job well, phew, it says hello world. But it is possible to do the same by wrapping the label around the input as well. So now we have our label wrapped around it. And the question is, I'm going to take out those. Oh, sorry, it's jumping all over the place. So the question is, will that actually generate an accessible name? And if we go and inspect element on it, look in the tree, and it still generates an accessible name. So the answer is yes. The difference is that this is what's called implicit ARIA label rather than explicit. Now, these days, almost all screen readers will accept the wrapping version as well, and they will generate a beautiful accessible name. So I hope that helped. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent for everyone, but I hope that was useful. Let's go back to our job, which is to look for the heading saying, what are mammals? We're going to inspect element on it. We're going to make sure we're on the right thing. And I want you to tell me, what is its role and level in chat? And the first one wins a free trip to the Bahamas. I'm lying. Oh, I think, who was our first winner, by the way? Oh, Joshua wrote it very formally. That's good. But I think the first person was David. Great job. Okay, so the answer, yes, is what are mammals? Heading level 1. So what does this mean? In a screen reader, if they came to this heading, it would say, what are mammals heading? And depending on the verbosity setting of the screen reader, it might also say level 1. I just want to pause here. Verbosity. Was that a hard one to spell out? Okay, so here we go. Next up, we're going to look at the table saying land mammals table. Okay, we're going to scroll down a bit, look for the land mammals table, and inspect element on it. If we make sure we're on the table and go to accessibility, we'll see it has a name. Sorry, we'll see it has a name of all about mammals and a role of table. I've gone the wrong thing. Here we go. There we go. Land mammals and a role of table. Make sure on the table, land mammals, table. Did everyone get that? Excellent. Okay. Oh, no. Okay, that's not good. Hopefully you can, the most important thing is to find the table, and then you should see the computed properties there. So hopefully you can catch up to us and get that. Okay, let's look at our next one. We're going to skip over a few things to make it a bit quicker. We're going to find a tiny bit of text saying Vombatus. So we need to go up to our image, and underneath there's a caption, and we're going to click on just the word Vombatus and inspect that. Make sure we're on that, just on that italic. And yes, correct, Kristen. And go to the accessibility tree. And what I want you to tell me is, does the Vombatus little bit of text have a name or a role? Just answer in chat. That's correct. It doesn't. So it actually says accessibility nodes not exposed. And what's that telling us? The reason is that not all elements need to be announced to screen readers. So some objects in the accessibility tree just aren't presented to assistive technologies. Okay, we're going to now look at the phone input, and we're going to find something totally different. We need to be on the input. And now we don't need to look at the name or the role. What we want to do is to find out whether this information here is actually included. So can you see somewhere in the computer properties where include area code is visible in the computed properties panel? Yeah, people have found it, the description. So this is another really important thing when bug hunting. A lot of people will present extra information associated with form controls. And we can quickly tell if that is programmatically associated by looking in the computed properties, and we should see it as a description. Now that's actually done by this thing called ARIA described by, and it's pointing up to here and creating a description. Cool. You're all experts now. Okay. Do we need to do any more? I will do one more quick one. How about we go to the email and we inspect element on it. Make sure we're on the input. And I want you to tell me something else, a new secret we can uncover. This is actually defined as required, which means that users have to type it in. But can you see somewhere in the computed properties that tells us that that's passed on to assistive technologies? Is there somewhere in computed properties? Oh, Jessica, coming out firing. Yeah, required true. So what happens here is this would be announced as email required text box to assistive technologies. Look at that. You're all world experts. Now, there's a few others, but we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to jump over. How would a visual user know that? Great question, Jessica. So our job, we're going off another tangent here, but our job, if a field is required, is to solve it two ways. One is programmatically by using that word required. That will help screen readers, but we should do it visually as well. So somewhere on this form, there should be something that announces it to visual users. Now, in the old days, people used to use asterisks, and we all know they're not great anymore. So somewhere here, generally speaking, you'd want to do something like add something here behind it. Like visually, now that would say required, and we could style that to look nicer. But this one here is for sighted users. The other one is associated with the element, and it is programmatically required. Does that make sense to everyone? Now, some people are going to be very tricky and go, does that mean they'll hear the word required twice? And the answer is yes. We can actually hide that bracketed one away from screen readers, but that's for another day. I'm conscious we're running out of time, so I'm going to move on quickly to ARIA. So ARIA is this fantastic thing that can add to what we're doing now. So ARIA is really just a set of custom HTML attributes, and they can add to the accessibility tree. Just looking at another question. If it is required and noted by asterisk, but the computer property states false, would there be an accessibility issue? Fantastic question. So just so we're all clear what's going on, what if someone put an asterisk here or the word required, but they didn't put it programmatically here? Now, most screen readers would get that what you're trying to do, but to me, that's not the perfect solution. You should do both. You should define it programmatically and present it visually. Does that make sense? So some people might fail that. I'm not that sort of hard line, and I'd leave it to chat to see what people think. But what I want to make sure is there are two different concepts. Okay, so let's move on. The ARIA, what ARIA allows us to do is to define things like name, role, etc. But it's really important. ARIA is especially important when we want to put name, role, and state on an element where it's not natively available. Cool. So this will make more sense when we do our next activity. So we're going to go to a totally different page, and I'm going to put it in chat. So give me a thumbs up when you've got that page in front of you. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at the accessibility tree. Excellent. Okay, so we're not going to do all of them now. We're just going to do a couple. So let's start with this button saying hello, but it's actually not a button. The developers lied. This is actually an evil div element. So if we go and look here and inspect element on it, it's actually not a button. If it was a button, it would actually say button here, but it's not. It's actually just a div. So the div actually has no semantic meaning. It's got no role. So we should never use it for a button. But this developer has actually given it a class to look like a button. They put tab index 0 so it can receive focus. And they've lied to the screen reader and said, this is actually a button. And if we go and look in the accessibility tree, and look at the word hello, it actually says role equals button. So if I take that off for a second, it just jumps back to being a generic image, a generic element. So we can use ARIA, things like roles, to enhance the experience for assistive technologies. And in some cases, if we couldn't use a button, we could actually say, I'm going to help out here, and I'm going to make this a role of button and help assistive technologies. And suddenly it will become a button. Now, we've got to be super careful here. And I'm going to ask you all, and you've got to answer in chat quickly. What does Spider-Man's uncle say to Spider-Man? What did Ben say to Peter Parker? Oh, look at this. With great power comes great responsibility. We have the ability to lie to screen readers. We shouldn't do that, but we should only do it if we're doing it for good. Cool? Okay, so I'm going to move on. Rule 1 for ARIA is the best rule. Rule 1, the use of ARIA is, I don't know what you mean by that, sorry. Okay, we're going to move on to looking at names. As we saw before, there's a beautiful function to look at names in the tree. But the computed property, people are answering a great thing, which is don't use ARIA. So the answer is yes. And someone said the rule number 1 of ARIA is don't use ARIA, and completely agree. So our role generally should be don't use ARIA unless you absolutely have to. Okay, so the computed properties panel shows us 3 amazing things about accessible names. It shows all the possible names that can appear, from strongest at the top to weakest at the bottom, and it shows where they come from, and it shows us which one wins. How fantastic is that? And this is really helpful when you're bug hunting. So let's now look at our third activity. I'm going to put it in chat. And I want you to give me a thumbs up when you're ready to roll. Now, this is probably the strangest form you're ever going to see in your life. You'll see in a minute why this is truly bizarre. On screen, you might see fox, fish, fox, cat, but behind the scenes, it's even stranger. What I've done here is something you should never do, but it's just to illustrate a point. I've actually given this input 5 possible names. So I've used ARIA label by to give it a name of cat. I've used ARIA label to give it a value of dog. I've used the label to give it a value of fish. I've used the title to give it a value of rabbit. And I've used the placeholder to give it a value of fox. Is that wild? Now, this is just an exercise. You should never do this. But what we want to do is work out which one wins. So if we go and look at this and inspect element on it, make sure we're on the input and look at the accessibility tree, we're going to close it off. Just make sure on this. And this is why I love Chrome's accessibility tree. This looks like a total mess, but it's telling us everything we need. What it's telling us at the very top is the winner is cat. That's the accessible name that wins. And it's also telling us that the others haven't won. So there's a placeholder, there's a title, there's a label, there's an ARIA label, but the ARIA label by won. It's the winner in this case. Now, you don't have to follow along. I'm just going to speed through it and just show you. In our next example down below, I've actually taken off the ARIA label by, so it doesn't exist. So now the dog wins. It beats the label, the placeholder, and the title. And so ARIA label wins because there's no ARIA label by. And if I go down to the next one, I've taken off the first 2, so now the label will win. So the word fish will win. And if I go down further, I'm speeding through this, just to explain, sorry. We don't have any ARIA label by or ARIA label or any label, so now the title would win. Now, we should never do this in real life, but this is just to show you. And then our fifth example, if we go down to the bottom, we can see that there's no ARIA label by, no ARIA label, no title, but there is a placeholder for this one wins. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. I'm especially worried about our interpreters. But hopefully that makes sense. I'm just answering a question, but what wins is determined by the screen reader combination, right? No, in this case, this is defined by the W3C. They have a specification that very clearly defines how accessible names and accessible descriptions are calculated. It's a very big document that you can read and goes into great detail, and browsers interpret this. Cool. Someone's talking about ANDI. I don't know what you're talking about, but love it. Okay, are you all world experts now? Is there one way that's most correct? Kat asks a great question. So I've shown you a really bad way to do all this, but there is a beautiful thing that's been available since the beginning of time, which is just to use the label. So if I look at this example number 3, this is the way we should do it. We have a visible label on screen, and we have a beautiful input associated with it. And that will deliver a fantastic accessible name coming from the label. So we should never really need to use ARIA label by or ARIA label. We want to use the native elements where they can. We should only use things like ARIA if there's no other thing available to us. Another quick question, if it's clear on how to navigate the developer tools if I use JAWS. I actually work with people who are blind to navigate the accessibility tree, and it's very hard. So I would spend a lot more time teaching them how to navigate to it. But yes, I've taught blind people how to access the tree. Okay, conscious of time, we're going to move on quickly to the sneaky title attribute. Now, the title is evil, truly evil. We should never use it, but I'm going to convince you why it's evil. And it's also very weak. It can be beaten for the accessible name and the description. Okay, so it'll try and win the battle for accessible name, and if it loses, it'll try and win the battle for accessible description. So we're going to go to our next example here. Okay, thumbs up when everyone's got that, and we'll do our next activity. Excellent. Cool. So we're going to inspect element on our first form field. We'll make sure we're on the input. We're going to go to accessibility. And what we should see is we have a name of add your name. So thumbs up if you're seeing add your name, and it's actually coming from the title. Excellent. So the title will win if there's no other element available. But if we look at our next one down, so if you go to the next one, so you could actually do it two ways. You could scroll down and inspect element on the next one. And if we look in the accessibility tree now, what we should see is the name is actually name, and it's coming from the label. But you notice that the title is crossed out. But can anyone see something sneaky that the title has done? It's right on screen now. What has the sneaky title gone and done? It is now the description. Did you see what's happening? So the title is gone, well, if I can't be a name, I'm going to become a description. See how sneaky it is? And if we go down to our third example, we're going to see how the title loses again. So now we have our third example. And if we go and look here, why is it announced twice? I actually think that's a small bug in Chrome. So I just ignore that, Adrian. So I'm very surprised by it as well. But here we'll see something interesting. We have a name coming from the label, the title is being crossed out, but the title also loses the battle for description. And that's because it's coming from this thing called ARIA described by. So the title actually tries to win the name and tries to win the description, and it can lose very quickly in both cases. So I don't know whether this is helping, but this is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful way of quickly inspecting elements and seeing how they're going to be announced to screen readers, and you can quickly bug hunt as you go. But you're probably thinking, this is too good to be true. And the answer is yes, it is too good to be true. And now I'm going to crash your world, and you might cry now, because sometimes not everything works as you would like. So like anything, we should be careful that Chrome's accessibility tree is okay, but it's got weaknesses. All tools have weaknesses. Even beautiful tools like Axe, they all have things that are good and bad about them. So we should always be careful about choosing one tool and assuming it's perfect. So Chrome does this weird thing that it doesn't always put the required information into the accessibility tree. Now I'm going to get very sort of technical here, so we'll just cover this quickly. But basically in this example, on screen now, I'm just going to show you that sometimes, even if we put the word required into the input, it doesn't get passed to the accessibility tree. Okay, so on screen, we have a whole series of different inputs. And in most cases, I've got a pass to show that that will be announced to screen readers. So if we look at the first one here, we inspect element on it, go and have a look at our input, accessibility. We can see that it's got a name of email address, a role of text box, but it's got this fantastic thing saying required true that we've seen before. So that's great. And that's coming from this required attribute. So what we should see is anytime we add the required attribute, it should show up as required : true. It should. Now, for some reason in Chrome, that's not always the case. So down here, I'm going to go to a different one. Now, you can look at these later and it will show you every single one, but I'm just going to go to one. Where's a good example? I'm going to go to date. So if I go down here to the date input, and we look at the accessibility tree, we go to here, it's got a name of choose a date, it's got a role of date, but it's got no required. This information is not being passed on to assistive technologies. So this is a very technical document. You don't really need to understand. Really, the bottom line is, while this tree is beautiful, it's a great bug hunting tool, it is not perfect. It is fantastic at quickly finding out information, but it should never replace rigorous accessibility testing and never replace actual screen reader testing. Okay, so just to wrap up, if you've never used Chrome's extensions before and never used this accessibility tree, I hope this was useful. And I'm going to stop now and we're going to answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Russ. This is Malcolm. We've got some questions in the Q&A already. First being, is there a most popular browser among people who use assistive technologies?
That's a great question. And I'll just throw to the wonderful WebAIM website. So if you did a Google search on WebAIM survey, I'll put it in chat. That link's in chat. You'll be able to find out all sorts of information. One of the things I love is primary screen reader, and that'll tell you which are the most popular screen readers, but it also has primary browsers, and it will tell you information about the people that are tested. So generally Chrome is the most common one now by a fair margin. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, the link is in chat to that, but I'll put it in again if you missed it, Rebecca.
It's Malcolm again. Next question being, any idea if it is possible to get rid of all of the, in quotes, ignored ones when, in quotes, drilling down in the tree. Sometimes I need to click 20 times to reach the right one.
Great question. I never navigate via the accessibility tree. So if I'm looking at an object, it may seem weird because I talk about the accessibility tree all the time, but I never use this panel to navigate this way. I will always find it on screen, right click on the object and just do it that way. And the other thing I do when I'm in the page is, I'm going to use a technical term here, I'm going to traverse the DOM. So I can actually click around in the DOM and just find the object I want very quickly and easy. So I never go and traverse the accessibility tree. I hope that answers your question.
This is a question referencing the all about mammals image. On the image caption, could you make that content available to the reader in lieu of an alt attribute?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. We're going to go back to that, our mammals image here. If we go to inspect element, the best, and I may be missing your question, so apologies. The best way to give an accessible name to an image is with the alt attribute. It's been around since the beginning of time. I'm just going to stop here and just say something. For years, people used to say to me, put an alt attribute on an image, and I would do it, but I didn't know behind the scenes what was happening. Now you know the secret. The alt attribute is just a way of generating an accessible name for the image. It is the best way, but you can see here, there are still other ways you could do it. We could put an ARIA label, or we could put an ARIA label by, but the alt attribute has been around since the beginning of time, and it is a beautiful, well-supported method. So you could use other methods, but the alt attribute is still the best. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to do one other quick thing while we're here. Something very interesting for you. If I put what's called a null alt on the image, you'll suddenly see something happen. It says accessibility node not exposed. We would do that for presentational images, images where we don't want to overburden screen readers. But we've got to be careful that we actually include the alt attribute, because all what happens in Chrome, if we don't, something terrible's happened. It actually thinks it's an image. So it'll announce it as an image, but not give it a name. So now it will just say image. And if you're a screen reader, you were like, thanks for nothing. Back to you.
Thank you. Next question is, if you have a non-text icon button, do you prefer using ARIA label to give it an accessible name, or using visually hidden text inside the button element?
Fantastic question. Now, we didn't get time, but I actually have that exact thing down here. So perfect setup. We have a button here with an X in it, but there's nothing on screen that tells us what that does. Now, a sighted user can probably get the context, but if I go and look inside, if we didn't do our job well, that button would have no accessible name, and it would just be announced as button. But in this case, I put an ARIA label there and said dismiss. You can see ARIA label dismiss. Sorry. So this is going to give it an accessible name. From Chrome's perspective, it doesn't care. You could put hidden text or an ARIA label or ARIA label by. It is just looking for a text string to deliver to screen readers. It is agnostic to the method you use. For many years, I would use hidden text because it was better supported. These days, I use ARIA label because it's very well supported and it's very quick and easy for developers to use.
Thank you. And one issue we run into is screen readers repeating either the name, description, state, etc. How would you troubleshoot to find out what is causing that duplication?
Oh, sorry, can you say the beginning of that again? No?
one issue we run into is screen readers repeating either the name, description, state, etc.
Yes. So because I'm a boring human, I actually have hundreds of test cases that I've built. So I'm going to share in screen.
And sorry, this is Malcolm again. They added some clarification. They mean when it's not showing anything as repeated in the accessibility tree.
Yeah, there could be a number of factors for that. So I may not be answering a question, but on this page that I've got in front of me, I've actually listed out all of the elements and how they're announced in various screen readers. So if we went to input typical search, it'll show the input, it'll show the code, and it will show how most screen readers will announce the information. So you can use this to look at almost any object, but it is not uncommon to get repeats of things. And I just want to show you something. Sorry, everyone, I'm coughing a bit here. Accessible name, here we go. So this page here, I'm going to put in chat. Where can I give you an example? That's not the page. Sorry, I've got to go to input. You can actually see duplications occurring. Here we go. This is the one I wanted. Sorry, everyone. Now, I may not be answering a question here, but you'll see information down here. This is similar to that example I'm giving you, but even though it shouldn't, what you often get is screen readers will try and help you, and they'll announce things like placeholders and titles, even though they shouldn't. So in theory, here we should only get something like cat, but we end up with cat, rabbit, fox, and all these other things. So I'm not sure without seeing your example, but it's not uncommon for it to try and help, and screen readers will actually show you all this other information because it's trying to help. And this is a good reason to never use the placeholder. Just be aware that every time you use a placeholder for an accessible name, a fairy will die somewhere in the world.
Malcolm again, is in quotes enable full page accessibility tree end quote view useful for developers or just for testers?
Great question. I didn't touch on that, but if you go here to any part on the page and we go to the accessibility, and I think this is what you're talking about, but up in the top corner is something I haven't talked about, but you can click on enable full page accessibility tree, and then you can use that to move around. I never use it, and I teach all the time, and I never teach this. I just focus on the simplest thing possible, which is the computed properties panel. It's a quick way to find what you need and see everything. So you can do it, but I never do it myself, and I never teach it. I don't know whether that helps.
I think we've got time for one more question. I'm pretty new to this. Could someone still navigate your mammals page easily with a refreshable Braille display?
The answer is yes. Great question. So refreshable Braille devices can be used in two ways. Some users use them instead of a screen reader, and some use them attached to a screen reader. There's many ways they can do them. For a lot of people, think of a refreshable Braille device as just another version of output for a screen reader. So a screen reader will announce it as sound, but the refreshable Braille device will just display it as a series of refreshable pins on their display. But the same information is available. I've actually worked with both sets of people many times, and a refreshable Braille device will actually say heading level 1 and then the information in a shorthand version. So I've worked with people that can skim through the refreshable Braille and see at the beginning the heading levels, etc., just by skimming the Braille. Great question.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to start sharing my screen again, and I think my thoughts are echoed in chat. It was an outstanding presentation. It was great to see so much interaction with the chat, a lot of enthusiasm, great questions, and such in-depth answers and extra resources shared. So thank you very much, Russ. for lending us your knowledge and time today. And thank you again to our support staff as well, our ASL interpreters, Beth and Lizzie, and our captioner, Jody. Thank you all for your great work as always. And for upcoming IAAP webinars, we have on November 14th, matching functional needs to assistive technology for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. And that's part of our digital accessibility series. And then on November 28th, as part of our built environment series, designing accessible navigation systems through wayfinding, signage, and orientation. And then on December 7th, wrapping up the digital accessibility series with the effect of digital transformation on the access to justice. And for those of you who are not yet an IAAP member, we welcome you to join our network of over 5,500 accessibility professionals in over 100 countries. And all IAAP members get discounts on live webinars, complimentary access to our library of archived webinars, our Connections networking platform, free courses, and more. And if anyone is interested, you can sign up at our website, www.accessibilityassociation.org, or email info@accessibilityassociation.org to see how you can become an IAAP member today. Once again, thank you to Russ. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And
Thanks, everyone.
the audience, thank you for joining us.